The winter of 1975 was one of the coldest Moscow had seen in decades. The streets were choked with snow, the air so bitter it burned the lungs with every breath. Beneath the frozen city, the metro tunnels hummed with the constant movement of trains, their electric warmth a fleeting comfort in the otherwise unrelenting cold. But that winter, something else was moving through those tunnels, something that should not have been there. It began on the night of February 11th, when veteran metro driver Yuri Petrov was guiding his train along the dark stretch between Ploshchad Revolyetsia and Kurskaya stations. The tunnels here were narrow, the walls pressing close, the tracks illuminated only by the dim glow of the train's headlights. Yuri had made this run 1,000 times before. He knew every curve, every flicker of the emergency lights, every distant echo of the rails. But this time, something was wrong. As his train rounded a bend, his blood turned to ice. Ahead, another train was coming straight toward him, on the same track. It was impossible. The control center had confirmed his was the only train on this line. There were no signals, no warnings, no blaring alarms, just the silent, unstoppable approach of another set of headlights cutting through the dark. Yuri slammed on the emergency brake, his heart hammering as the wheels shrieked against the rails. The passengers behind him lurched forward, some crying out in surprise. But when the collision should have happened, when metal should have screamed and glass shattered, there was nothing. Just a sudden, unnatural silence. The other train passed through his own like a ghost. For those few seconds, Yuri swore he saw faces in the windows, pale, hollow-eyed, their mouths open as if frozen mid-scream. The train itself was unlike any in Moscow's fleet. Its paint was faded, its design archaic, the kind of carriage that hadn't run since the 1930s. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. Yuri reported the incident immediately, his hands still shaking. The control center dismissed it as a trick of the light, a hallucination brought on by fatigue. But 3 nights later, another driver saw it. This time, the ghost train didn't just pass by, it stopped at Ploshchad Sverdlova, a station that had been sealed off since 1935. The train slowed to a halt, its doors opening with a hiss of ancient pneumatics. The few late-night passengers who witnessed it swore the platform lights flickered to life, illuminating a scene from another era. Newspapers from the 1930s littered the benches, faded propaganda posters hung on the walls. And standing in the doorway of the train was a conductor in a tattered uniform, his face gaunt, his voice a dry rasp as he called out stops that hadn't existed in decades. No1 boarded. No1 dared. The doors closed, and the train vanished into the tunnel, leaving behind only the scent of coal smoke and something fouler, something like damp earth and rotting flesh. Then came the final sighting. On March 3 RDA. Metro cleaner named Anya Volkova was doing her rounds at Park Pobdy station when she noticed an empty train idling at the platform. The lights inside were dim, flickering like candle flames. The seats were empty, the air was cold, colder than it should have been. She stepped inside. The doors sealed shut behind her with a finality that made her stomach drop. The train lurched forward, picking up speed, though no one was at the controls. The intercom crackled to life, broadcasting a voice that wasn't human. Just a wet, choking rattle of syllables that might have been words once. Security footage from the station showed the train pulling away, its windows fogging over from the inside, as if something were breathing heavily against the glass. Anya's screams were audible even through the cameras. She was found weeks later, deep in the abandoned tunnels near the old Sverdlova station. Her body was curled in the fetal position, her fingertips worn to bloody stubs from clawing at the walls. The coroner's report listed her cause of death as exposure, but the metro workers who found her whispered otherwise. Her eyes had been frozen open. This day, Moscow metro employees refused to work the late shift on certain lines. They say that if you're alone in the tunnels long enough, you'll hear it. The distant rumble of wheels on tracks where no train should be, the flicker of lights in stations that were bricked up long ago. And sometimes, just sometimes, if you listen closely to the static of the intercom, you'll hear a voice whispering the same 2 words over and over: next stop.
The rain fell in unrelenting sheets over Tokyo on the evening of October 17, 1988, turning the platforms of Sata Station into slick mirrors reflecting the flickering fluorescent lights above. The Kyoto-Hoku Line train pulled in precisely at 11:37 p.m., its windows fogged with condensation, the humid air inside thick with the scent of damp clothing and stale breath. The few late-night commuters boarding at this hour were exhausted salarymen and students, their heads bowed against the weight of another grueling day. None of them noticed the woman in white until it was too late. Conductor Masao Tanaka first saw her as he made his routine walk through the carriages. She stood near the rear doors of the third car, her back turned to him, her long black hair dripping onto the shoulders of a sodden white dress that clung to her thin frame. The train was nearly empty at this hour, and Tanaka made a mental note to check on her. Perhaps she was ill, or worse, suicidal. But when he reached the spot where she had been standing, the space was empty. Only a small puddle of water remained on the floor, its surface shimmering under the flickering lights. Tanaka frowned. He had seen her clearly, the way her dress clung to her legs as if she had been standing in the rain for hours, the unnatural stillness of her posture. He radioed ahead to the next station, requesting security check the cameras. The response that crackled back through his headset made his blood run cold. No passengers matching that description boarded at Saitama Shinshin. The cameras show the rear doors opening to an empty platform. The following night, she appeared again. This time, the train was fuller, the humid air thick with a murmur of tired conversations. A college student named Aiko Shimizu was dozing against the window when she felt the temperature around her plummet. Her breath fogged the glass as she opened her eyes, and there, reflected in the dark pane, was the woman in white, standing directly behind her. Aiko would later tell police that the woman's face was wrong. Not disfigured, not monstrous, just wrong in a way that made her stomach twist. Her skin was too pale, her eyes too dark, her lips slightly parted as if she were about to speak, but had forgotten how. The most unsettling detail, though, was the smell, the thick, briny stench of seawater and rotting kelp that filled the air around her. When Aiko turned around, the seat behind her was empty, but the cushion was soaked through as if someone had been sitting there, dripping wet for hours. By the third week of sightings, the rumors among the late-night staff had reached a fever pitch. The woman in white was appearing more frequently now, always boarding at Saitama Shinshin, always vanishing before the next stop. Security footage showed nothing, just empty platforms and doors opening to no one. But the conductors who encountered her swore she spoke to them. Is this the train to Sendai? Sendai Station had been destroyed in the 2011 tsunami, but in 1988, it was still decades away from ruin. On the night of November 2nd, the horror reached its peak. Driver Hiroshi Kobayashi was guiding the train through a particularly dark stretch of track when he saw her. Not inside the train this time, but on the rails ahead, standing motionless in the beam of the headlights. Her white dress billowed around her as if caught in an unseen current, her hair streaming behind her like ink spilled in water. Kobayashi slammed on the emergency brake, the train screeching to a halt just meters from where she stood. When the inspectors arrived, they found no body, no evidence that anyone had been on the tracks at all. But embedded in the front grate of the train was a single hanya mask, the kind used in no theater to portray vengeful female spirits. Its surface was slick with seawater, its empty eyes staring accusingly up at them. The Kiyotohoku line was quietly rerouted in 1992, the old tracks left to rust. But to this day, late-night commuters report seeing a lone figure in white standing on the abandoned platform at Saitama Shinshin, her face obscured by the rain. And when the storms roll in from the sea, the station attendants lock the doors early, because they know, if you listen closely, you can hear the distant sound of a train approaching on tracks that no longer exist. And the voice whispering over the intercom. Next stop, Sendai. The evening of March 15th, 1951, began like any other for British Rail's 11:03 p.m. express from London Paddington to Bristol Temple Meads. The train, a gleaming black GWR King-class locomotive pulling 7 carriages, departed precisely on schedule, its steam whistle cutting through the damp spring air as it accelerated into the night. 92 passengers settled into their compartments, some dozing against rain-streaked windows, others sipping from flasks or quietly playing cards beneath the dim glow of carriage lamps. None of them would reach their destination. At 11:07 p.m., the train entered the Severn Tunnel, the longest mainline railway tunnel in Britain. The moment it disappeared into that yawning black mouth, something went terribly wrong. When the train emerged from the tunnel's western portal exactly 7 minutes later, signalmen at Pilning Station noticed something odd. The locomotive's headlamp was dark, its usual rhythmic chuffing replaced by an eerie, coasting silence. As it rolled to a stop, station staff approached cautiously, their breath fogging in the unseasonably cold air. The carriages were intact, no signs of collision or mechanical failure. But when they peered through the windows, their blood turned to ice. Every single passenger was gone. The investigators who arrived at dawn found a scene that defied all logic. In the first-class dining car, half-eaten meals still steamed on porcelain plates, forks balanced precariously at the edges. A cigar rested in an ashtray, its ember glowing faintly. In the third-class compartments, newspapers lay open across seats, their pages rustling in a breeze that shouldn't have existed. Most chilling of all was the discovery in carriage 4, a baby's pacifier, still warm to the touch, lying abandoned on a velvet-upholstered bench. But the true horror lay in the details. Every clock on board, from the conductor's pocket watch to the station clocks visible through the windows, had stopped at precisely 11:07 p.m. The platform clocks at Pilning showed the correct time, 11:14 a.m. The train's logbook contained one additional page that hadn't been there at departure, a single sheet filled with frantic handwriting that grew increasingly illegible, ending with the phrase, "They're not letting us out. The walls are breathing. God help." The final word was an ink blot shaped disturbingly like a screaming face. Forensic teams scoured every inch of the train. They found no signs of struggle, no blood, no fingerprints except those belonging to the missing passengers. The only anomaly was the temperature. While the morning was unseasonably warm, the interior of the carriages remained at exactly 4 degrees Celsius, 39 degrees Fahrenheit, their windows perpetually fogged, as if something inside was still exhaling. Then came the sounds. Workers maintaining the tunnel reported hearing whispers echoing through the brick arches, not from any discernible source, but from the walls themselves. Phantom steam whistles would shriek from abandoned branch lines that hadn't seen traffic since the 19th century. Most disturbingly, signalmen at Severn Tunnel Junction began reporting a ghostly extra train on their boards, one that appeared as a blip moving through the tunnel at exactly 11:07 p.m. each night, only to vanish upon reaching the midpoint. The final horror emerged in 2003, when urban explorers illegally accessed a sealed maintenance shaft near the tunnel's midpoint. Their flashlight beams revealed something impossible. A derelict train covered in decades of dust, its GWR livery still faintly visible beneath the grime. The explorers' photographs, later leaked to the press, showed windows fogged from the inside with what appeared to be breath condensation, a conductor's cap resting on a seat, its surface unnaturally pristine, the shadowy outline of a face pressed against a window in one photo. Despite the explorers being alone, when authorities investigated, they found the shaft empty. But the air smelled faintly of coal smoke and something else, something metallic and wet, like a butcher's shop at closing time. To this day, British rail engineers refuse to work in the Severn Tunnel after dark. They say if you listen closely when the tracks are silent, you can still hear the 11:03 p.m. express rolling through, its whistle screaming not in warning, but in terror. And sometimes, just sometimes, the signal lights at Pilning will flicker green for a train that isn't there, the platform clocks shuddering backward to 11:07 p.m. as a cold wind rushes from the tunnel's black mouth. The last entry in the missing conductor's recovered notebook reads, "The tunnel isn't a tunnel at all. It's a throat, and we're being swallowed."